Okay, good morning, everybody. Hope you are doing well as we end the first week of 2025, or at least the first work week, full work week of 2025. I know things around here have certainly been very busy on my end as people are coming back and really getting geared up to achieve all the kind of goals and targets that we've set out for ourselves this year. It's always an exciting time of year from my perspective because it's kind of a fresh start, and you come back a little bit, um, hopefully relaxed and feeling good and ready to take on some new challenges in a new year. So that's where we are. It's definitely when you're in the logistics business, as I often say we are. It's definitely a challenging week and a challenging time of year. There's this huge cold front that's going throughout the United States, and particularly in the southern parts of the United States. And there's lots of ice and snow in places that don't traditionally get ice and snow. And when that's the case, it creates a lot of havoc operationally. And that's definitely been top of mind for us, and something that I've been dealing with and observing over the last few days. And it's not fun, and it's not something that I enjoy having to contend with, but it's just one of those facts of life. And a lot of people get impacted, and we see like all these natural disasters in California, which look absolutely awful you know when observing them from afar, and really feel for all the people there that are impacted, and having to deal with these forces of nature. And that seems to be a happening throughout the country right now, in different ways. And when you're operating in as many different places as we do, we have an obligation to both keep our employees safe and make sure that we're operating in safe ways, and at the same time make sure we're communicating to our customers and delivering on our promises in that part of the world. And it's not always so easy, and this has been one of those weeks where we've been tested. But I feel confident we will get through it and come out on the other end with it. But it's definitely been a difficult week from that perspective. But you know as Michael just put up, I guess Happy New Year. Still 10 days. It doesn't feel like the new year to me anymore. I feel like we're just ready to grind. But we're 10 days into the new year. Um, and I definitely appreciate it if you hit the like button to increase the engagement, if you want to continue to get these live streams every week, because it's definitely a big commitment to be giving an hour or so to this weekly. And I'm willing to do it as long as there continues to be interest and people keep showing up. And a big reason that it ultimately gets fed and people see it is if you hit the like button, if you hit comment, or if you had ask good questions so I can give you hopefully thoughtful answers. That's really what drives engagement with this. So I really would appreciate it if you would hit like, if you want to continue to see this. Vlad says, "Hi, David." Well, hi, Vlad. I hope I'm not butchering your name too badly. I probably am, but it's not personal. But thank you for showing up. I really appreciate it. If you could hit the like button, or share it with your friends, I would really appreciate that. But hope you're having a good start to the new year. Yeah, let's go with question number one. Camilla. Hi, David. I would love to ask you about your beginnings with the company. I understand you took over your granddad's company. What shape was it in? What did you do first? Just for a little bit of context. Thank you very much. Um, yeah, sure. I've addressed this in really probably some of the earlier videos, but just as a quick recap, when I graduated from school, I actually went to work at Goldman Sachs, where I was ultimately an options trader. So I ran the emerging market um, FX options, foreign exchange options business in New York when I left. And so, I was finance and had nothing to do with what I currently do today. But I ended up buying from family industrial supply business called Talladega Machinery and Supply Company, which was just a small industrial supply business that was basically buying and selling industrial supplies to people in the wood products industry primarily. And so, it's you're competing with big companies like Granger or ultimately Amazon. And the way we were doing that was like through legacy, relationships. We had salespeople that, were, average age was in their 60s that had been doing it for years, that have relationships in, certain businesses that, that kind of kept that business alive. But as you can imagine, with, Granger and Amazon and all these bigger players getting better and better at delivery at the time and pricing and this kind of stuff, like we could not compete from a pricing perspective, and so ultimately got competed out and had to shut that business down. So like it's one of those things that I bought it, had no idea what I was going to do when I got it. It was not a very profitable venture. It was kind of making enough to keep the lights on, more or less, and I had to find a way to do something with it, and ultimately is what was the genesis of my air filter business. And so, like, not this week, but next week, we're putting out a video, I think, with a talking about bias to action and the importance of bias to action, and why it's been so important for me in building and in growing and in doing things. And that was one of the first examples of it. As I bought a business kind of out of obligation, and to kind of family legacy stuff, but it was not a good financial decision. It was actually a very bad financial decision for me, but I had a bias to action to figure it out and kind of start something new. And that's ultimately what led to me starting what Filter By that you see today. So that's the kind of long story short, but I've been on a number of podcasts recently, and there are a couple of big ones that are actually going to be dropped in the next few weeks, where I go into that in a more detailed way. And so I would suggest I would suggest kind of searching those out, because I think that there's a long story to that is out of the context of this Q&A, but it was quite a winding road. But I think that's the way it is for most people. I mean, anybody that sells you a straight linear path from where you are to success is really lying to you, because there is no one path. There's only your path, and generally it kind of takes take some trial and error and figuring it out. And that's what I would recommend for anybody that is kind of earlier on in their journey. Time to 3D print 468. 3D printing. That's a cool thing. Hello, David. Thank you for doing these live streams. I have watched all of them. They are very informative and motivational. I currently am a senior in high school, and I am trying to decide whether to go to college or not. I run a business in my free time, and I did a little over $500,000 last year. I've applied to colleges, but I was wondering what your advice would be when it comes to either going to college and getting a degree, or committing to growing my business, which I feel like would grow much faster when I have all my time during the day dedicated to it. We've kind of answered this question a couple of times before, and the reality is that there is no right or wrong answer. There's only the right or wrong answer for you. And I don't want your parents or your teachers coming to hunt me down for giving you bad advice. So I'll give you some high level thoughts about it, and then you can ultimately have to make the decision for yourself. And I would certainly make sure that you value the people around you and their thoughts and opinions, because they probably know you certainly better than I do. But ultimately, I think this comes down to self-awareness. And I do not think that, in fact, I know that college is not a prerequisite to financial success or any type of success. I mean, you certainly do not need college, especially in 2025, when information is readily available. The lack of information is not going to be the differentiator in whether you're successful or not. And historically, that may or may not have been the case. Generally, how I think about it is that if you're in the position to go to like a very top tier college, call it like a Harvard or something that is certainly top tier, where you can build a network, that I actually do think college still has a lot of value. I mean, I cannot tell you how many people I have seen that I that I do not think would really be successful entrepreneurs or have the grit that it takes to be successful, but are disproportionately successful because of the network effect that they're in. So like a lot of the private equity world is from people that have gone to these top tier colleges that ultimately end up, it becomes a mechanism where the people around you or your network or your friend group is what ultimately drives your opportunity set and your success. And it's something that if you can have that on your side, it's hugely impactful, and is really a cheat code for life. And I've seen that, I've observed that many times over my career, even though I was never kind of really taken into that world. And so, I think if you have the opportunity to do that, it's something that you should at least seriously consider, because there is a lot of benefit to that network effect, because the people that you associate with and the people that you become friends with ultimately are one of the largest indicators of whether or not you're going to be successful or kind of move up or not. And I think that's something that's maybe not talked about enough or a lot, but I mean, it's undeniably true if you kind of observe it. But like, if you're not in the running to be able to kind of put yourself in that type of experience, then I think that the college value proposition is much harder. And like, if you're not trying to do something that requires a college degree, like a doctor or a lawyer or those traditional career paths, and you really know that you're purebred entrepreneur and that's what you want to devote your life to, then if you're making a decision between just like a kind of regular everyday college and networking experience, I think that then you would have the argument to yourself or to the people around you to say, hey, I really want to give this entrepreneurial thing a shot, and I've got a plan, and I'm going to go out and attack it with all my energy and all my free time. And like, if I were a parent and you were coming and pitching that to me, then I would say, and I really kind of saw that was your truth, then I would say, yeah, go for it. And college is not necessary. So it comes down to self-awareness, and at the end of the day, only you should make that decision. It's your life, and you have to be comfortable with the decisions that you make in your life. And you're the one that at the end of your life, I think you have to be honest and true to yourself. And whatever that truth is, only you can really answer. But the things I kind of talk about are the factors that I would at least weigh in making that. I mean, like in my case, sometimes I say I wish I had not gone to college, because I think I would have been an entrepreneur way earlier in my life and could have been, potentially more successful later on. But at the same time, if I had not gone to college, I never would have been able to get a job at Goldman Sachs, which led me to a lot of interesting experiences that were very formative for me. And I learned a lot from working for, somebody else, and kind of seeing how the world works and getting an understanding of how the world works. That was hugely important for me, and I wouldn't change anything. Wouldn't change that for the world. And I would never have gotten that if I had not gone to college. And so, I think that got to college and worked really hard at college, and put myself in a position of being able to land a job like that. That was hugely important for me and for my journey, and I wouldn't change that for anything. And so I wouldn't go back and do it any different. So I think that there is a value to taking that time in college to forge relationships and to start to understand who you are. And you can always start a business. I mean, I started Filter by when I was 30 more or less. And sounds like, I mean, you're 18, so you think about another 12 years, probably 60% of your current life again before I even started. And I still feel like I'm young and just getting going with all of this. So I wouldn't I wouldn't not go to college just because like you're impatient. And that's not a good enough reason. You have to really have a passion for a particular path that you're working on if you're going to justify it to yourself, in my opinion. So anyways, that's the long-winded answer, non-answer, I guess, for you. But ultimately you'll make the right decision, and whatever decision you make, you just have to commit to it fully, and not look back, and not wonder what if. You have to be comfortable committing to whatever it is the decision you make is, and only you can answer that question. But I wish you the best of luck. John Kapchek, David, love your YouTube and LinkedIn videos. Keep it up. Well, thank you for watching. I mean, I'll continue to keep it up as long as I continue to get engagement from it and people are finding it useful. And certainly harder and harder to break out in the kind of modern social landscape, especially when I think you're kind of being honest with people and showing what reality looks like. A lot of times people don't seem to want to understand reality or want to believe that um, how things really work. I think it's kind of my take, having been at this for a couple months now. But I'm committed to seeing it through, and to being as transparent and open as reasonably can be expected, moving forward. But I'm competing with a lot of these kind of what I would call fake influencers, or fake kind of people that are kind of misguided out there, and it's a hard thing to break through. So I appreciate you showing up and supporting it, and hit the like button and share it with your friends. I guess that's all I can ask. Good morning, Mr. David. Watching from my couch this time. I guess you're stuck with the snow. Just as long as I'm told that it's going to get well above freezing today, so there's no excuse for us not to get in and ship what we need to ship as the day goes on. So just maybe you should actually go show up and help them with some shipping. You can call CJ, and I bet you he would take your help if you're willing. So we'll see. But thank you. Go with Ali. What is the best way to keep employees motivated and get them to be with you on your quote unquote mission? Well, I don't know if there is one best way, and I'm still figuring it out myself. But the first step is, I think you have to have a clearly articulated mission and vision that you yourself are willing to put your energy and money behind, and are willing to commit fully, kind of with no turning back kind of thing. I mean, I think like one of the advantages I have is that I've been very consistent on what I'm building. I've been very consistent on the effort that I've been, putting into, my mission, or my business, which started 12 years ago, more or less. And I show up every single day working on that mission. And I think that, my employees recognize that. And, I'm a big fan of leading by example. I mean, we put out a video last week about a logistics problem that we had, and my team actually videoed it. It was not a planned video. Most of our videos now aren't planned. It's just something that comes from my day-to-day operating a business. But that video wasn't planned, and you got to see me showing up, to solve a problem that a lot of the comments would say, like, well, that's like not something you should be fooling with. But the reality is that I take this business and our systems so seriously, and our customer promises so seriously, because I know just how important that is. And to have the alignment with our long-term mission that I've stated publicly. And so I'm not below showing up and doing the things that need to be done in order to make that make things happen. And I think that generally my employees see that, recognize that, and are more likely to take the things seriously that they see me taking seriously. And so I think leading by example is a big piece of that. But you also have to have a compelling mission. It has to be something that people really want to rally behind, and are are have passion behind. And I think that ultimately that they feed off of you, or the leadership, to fuel that passion or not. And I think that part of the reason why I'm doing all this social media stuff and all these YouTube videos is it's a way for me to also make sure that my employees understand what our mission is, and why we're doing what we're doing, and what is important. And it allows me to lead by example through that in a way that it would be impossible for me to do on a one-by-one basis. So that's part of the reason why I went so public with all these YouTube videos, is to be able to solidify that mission. It forces me to have clarity of mind, clarity of thought, and then go out and rally and find other people that are aligned on that mission. And then hopefully, over time, more and more people that, if you come and work for us, and you come work for Filter By, you know what we're about, because like what you see is what you get. We're out there. I'm out there showing exactly who we are, what we expect, what we're out there building, what we're forecasting to build, and why we're doing what we're doing. I'm putting that out publicly, and so part of the reason for that is to have a selecting mechanism. Like if you come and work for us, I hope that is something that aligns with who you are and what you want to build and what you want to be a part of. And if it's not, then we're probably not the right organization for you. And so that's a big motivation for me, starting to be so public and talk about this stuff so publicly, right? And being so transparent, because I hope that it selects for the like-minded people that want to come in and be a part of what we're building. And that's a real motivator for me. So that's kind of general thoughts about it. Go ahead, Michael. Rand Business Shorts. Do you sell shorts, or do you do short form on YouTube? Interesting. I don't know. If you sell shorts, then that sounds like could be a good business. A few of my friends recommended your content to me. Just chiming in here to say I really liked your videos. I understand the difficulty of cutting through the noise of other quote unquote misguided creators. Well, I really appreciate you showing up. Keep going. Well, I'm all in on making this stuff work, Rand. So I really appreciate the fact that your friends shared this with you. I would appreciate it if you would share it with some of your friends. It's something that I am extremely committed to figuring out how to crack the content creation code, but really, I want to do it by adding as much value as I realistically can. As I've talked about so many times, I absolutely love entrepreneurship. I love business. I love indoor air quality and the mission that we're on. I mean, it fuels me. I wake up every single day thinking about it and striving to be better, striving to improve, striving to learn. And I want to be able to share the things that I learn along the way publicly, and also get feedback publicly. I mean, people are definitely not shy of giving feedback when we put things out, and I love that too, because I at least I think I'm self-aware enough to know when there's truth and when there's not, and I'm pretty confident in who I am, and I and prepare for that. But really, my goal is to offer as much value as realistically possible, and hopefully attract a community and an audience that way, and do it, by just being authentic to who I am and to who we are as a business, and sharing with you what I'm learning. I mean, and I don't have all the answers. Far from it. I'm out here just grinding and learning every single day. But the wisdom compounds over time, and I hope to be able to share a few of those nuggets along the way, and learn more along the way. And that's been very powerful for me already in this. And the bigger we get and the bigger the community that we can build, the better off, the better I think it ultimately will become. So I'd appreciate it if you would share it with a few of your friends, and maybe we can increase that way. So thank you for showing up, and I appreciate your support. Scott Donaldson. I think you've asked a question before. Thank you for showing up again. In your biggest shipping fail ever video released last week, can you walk us through the decision to go on site yourself versus delegating to a key operations team member? I could sense your frustration in the video and appreciate the authenticity. I have similar feelings around our problems too. I think the solution is obvious, but in many cases, it isn't to others. It's interesting to me how controversial that video was from people. They're like, oh, you shouldn't show up on it or whatever. And it's a little more complicated than it probably looked outwardly on camera in that situation. I will say that what you saw there was completely authentic and real. Like, we were not planning on filming any of that, and it really was something that I that was really just, my team was with me as we were doing some other traveling that week, and we kind of ended up fitting that in last minute because it was something that was really important to me. The problem there was a lot trickier than maybe it looks. I set up every single one of our manufacturing and shipping fulfillment centers. I mean, like, I did all of that myself over a number of years. And it's not something that I would recommend to somebody else, but it's just the reality for us and for me at FilterBuy. And so, and I actually programmed, with the team of outsourced developers, like every single one of the actual technology systems that run our whole business. And so, I basically iterated that over a 12-year period. And so I have a tremendous amount of like specific, like wonky institutional knowledge that allows me to kind of look at a problem like that and get to the root cause way quicker than anybody else. And the reason why I showed up that day is like they were in the process of fixing it. And if like honestly, like within another day or so, would have gotten it fixed even without me. Like it's something that like would have been fixed, but there were a few things that were not adding up to me that I could see just like in the data that I'm able to follow, and in like the communication that I was getting that made me concerned that it was a way bigger problem than we initially thought. And it turned out it was actually a small problem that I think would have ultimately gotten corrected. But I didn't know that, and I couldn't have known that the day before when I made the decision to kind of change my schedule and go. And I'm really thankful that I showed up, because I think it sends the right signal to my team of how important it is. And the actual root cause was a faulty printer cable, and that's what made it so tricky. Is because like everything was functioning as you would expect from a systems perspective, but it was just kind of slower, and like there was some data missing. That was causing a problem that we had never seen before. And I kind of sussed that out pretty quickly, because I went through like a mental checklist of all the things that could possibly be wrong. But it was something that like literally it was a faulty printer cable that was functioning, but it just wasn't functioning consistently. And that's a very tricky thing, especially for somebody at the end of the line to kind of figure out. And it's like it was not as obvious to an outsider as it may have looked. But like the reason I showed up is I was worried it was a larger problem, because there was just a lot of things that were not adding up that didn't make sense to me. And I take this stuff seriously and didn't want to let it compound and get worse. So it's one of those things that it would have been solved. And like if I had not shown up, we would have figured it out, or over time. But I was able to substantially reduce the time that it took to get it fixed. And I was going because I was worried that it may be a symptom of a larger problem that I was missing. And I certainly don't regret showing up, but it comes from just having done this for a long time, and also taking so seriously our shipping commitments, and our on-time delivery and this kind of stuff. I mean, we take it more seriously than you can imagine. And it's so important in modern day fulfillment and e-commerce, even though a lot of people don't realize that. And it's just a muscle that we built. And it only counts on the tough days, and that was a tough day. And I was curious to go and understand the problem. And you also have to realize, like, there was one particular location that was having these problems, but I was worried that it may be a symptom of a kind of a larger problem that would have been system wide, and that's why I really wanted to dig in and just understand what the root cause of that was. And by me going and showing up, I was able to do that fairly quickly. And I think, as I said, even in the video, it was a way stupider problem than I imagined. It was not what I expected when I walked into the place. And if hindsight's 2020, if I had known exactly what the problem is, maybe I wouldn't have shown up. But you don't know that when you're going into it, right? And we filmed it all and put it out, and I got a little bit of hate, and the managers there got a lot of hate on it. I don't think that it's completely fair. But people love to play backseat driver or Monday morning quarterback, and you do it. But I'm out in the arena getting stuff done, and I don't regret it. And so you can sit there and you can look at my videos and comment and tell me how I should do things better, and that's great. As long as you're also out there putting in the work, and I'm out there putting in the work. And I don't always do it right. I screw up plenty of times, or maybe make wrong decisions more times than I would like, but I show up every day. And I think that's the lesson that I really want people to get from the video. Is sometimes you got to show up, and I take this stuff seriously. I take like as the entrepreneur, especially, I am the architect of all the systems that work in our business. That's what an entrepreneur is you're ultimately a system builder. And if you're going to do something new, then like you're like you as entrepreneur are the one that has to take ownership of all of those systems. It's not always pretty, but that's just what entrepreneurship in business is about. Like if you go into a business that's already existing, that already has robust systems, all this kind of stuff, then you can just be a CEO that's a steward of those systems. And that's what a lot of people say. Like when they think that they're an entrepreneur, they're really just kind of a steward of something that was already existing, or that's already been built. And that's very different. But when you're out there, like really pushing to grow, really pushing to do new things, you as the entrepreneur and the CEO have to be the chief architect of those systems. And I'm the chief architect of our systems. And so like if something's going wrong, that other people can't fix, it's ultimately my fault. It's not their fault. It's my fault that it's not working, or that there was not a robust system, or there was the wrong person in a particular spot. Ultimately, I have to take ownership of that. And so, like when I see symptoms of a potential larger problem, you better bet your bottom dollar I'm going to be there and figure it out and take ownership of it. And anybody that's out there saying, "Oh, it should be below you," or somebody else should be figuring it out, is never going to make it in business, in my opinion. Because if you want to be the leader, especially in a growing entrepreneurial organization, then you got to take ownership, accountability, and show up. And that's what I did, and I certainly do not regret it. But that's the long-winded answer to your question. Brian, appreciated the business insights and vulnerability. Very helpful. Well, thank you for showing up. I do my best to share what I learned along the way, and I definitely screw up a lot, and I'm confident enough. I'm not afraid to show those screw ups, and share them, because that's reality. Like if you're not out there screwing stuff up, then you're not trying hard enough, or you're not trying enough new things. I mean, like, yeah, I could sit here and just do like the things that we're good at, that we already have established businesses in, and just repeat that over and over again, and not try anything new, and screw up very little, and probably live an easier life. But that's not what growth and fulfillment comes from, in my opinion. And so, like, if you want to be out there doing new things and experimenting and growing, then it's going to come with failure and with getting things wrong sometimes. And the sooner that you can accept that and be comfortable with that, the better off you're going to be. And I'm super comfortable with that, because I failed a lot. I fail a lot more often than I succeed at things that I try. But I wake up the next day and try again with a new angle, with a little more wisdom, a little more learning, and keep pushing forward. And that is really the recipe for success. And I think so many people want to pretend otherwise. And I just think that I'm not going to just show you the wins and the good stuff. I'm very much committed to that, and that's why I allowed that video to be published. Because like I said, it was not a prepared video. It was not something that we were like, oh, this is the idea what we're going to do this week, and go and concoct it. What you saw was reality. That's what I would have been doing whether or not I was being filmed or not. And I think it maybe didn't make the video, but it made the tease. I said this cannot make it in the video. Like there are a lot of things where I was like, at first I didn't think I wanted to share, but I ultimately was like, okay, I'm going to put it out there, and it got a lot of engagement. And I guess all engagement is good engagement, but that's just reality of entrepreneurship. And if you're only seeing people's wins, then they're being misleading at best and lying to you at worst. And that's reality. And it's not always win. It's not always easy. But the differentiator is showing up and putting in the action, taking the actions that you need to correct it when things go wrong. And that's just reality. Got to keep pushing forward. Joseph Cruz, what was the process of building the business culture, quote unquote, or sorry, inside your company that you want? So that's the end of the question. The like I kind of answered this earlier, I think, in that I'm a big believer in leading by example. I mean, like we went through earlier this year, or sorry, early last year, early in 2024, a process that I picked up from a couple of books like Traction or The Rockefeller Habits, which are kind of business organization books. They talk about the importance of having a stated mission and values for your business. And so, I actually started early last year the process of thinking like, okay, what are the values for Filter by? What is our mission? This kind of stuff. And what I realized in my case is that the values of the business are very consistent with the values that of me as a person, or what I value as a person. And so, like, as the CEO, and more importantly, the entrepreneur that started and grew Filter by and grew this business, the business has become a reflection of the things that I value, that I find important. It's like when I go through the value statement, it was actually a very personal thing for me in solidifying like what are the values that we as a company exhibit. And what I found is when we've had our successes, or when we've done things, is when we've had when we've done things that align with my core values, that ultimately become the company's core values. And I was able to instill those by living it day to day for the last 12 years, and building a team and an organization that is consistent with those values that I live by, and that I show up every day and execute on. And so, for me, it's really about leading by example, and exhibiting those core values, and living on that mission every single day. And I show up every single day working towards my mission of building the world's leading indoor air quality company. And we have a set of values that support how we do business, and how we execute on things. And those are very personal to me, but I've been able to, I think, instill those in our business by leading through example, and also by rewarding people on those, and cutting ties with people that don't exhibit that. I mean, it's like now, like when we go through review process, and compensation changes and all this kind of stuff, like one of the biggest factors that go into that are related to those core values, because like we take them very seriously. And it's like, historically, we did not do as good of a job. I didn't do as good of a job of actually articulating what those are, and actually coaching people around that. And the beauty of going through the process of of solidifying your core values in your mission is then it gives you the ability to talk with your employees about it, make sure that they are clear, that they understand that this is what really matters to you and your organization, and then to coach them around that. And like if you need to have like an improvement talk, then you can do that, framing to the values that you already as an organization have set out. And that only works if you as the leader are going to take those values seriously, both in how you act and in what you reward throughout your employee base. And so that's really how we're handling it. And I think that early on, especially when we were smaller, I was able to do that just by by example, and showing them, living it every day, and doing it myself. But we've formalized that more. We've really put that on paper. I did a lot of soul searching, really thinking through like what are the things that drive that are important to me and important to our business. Like what are the values that we need to live by? Put that on paper, and then that gives my managers and people throughout the organization a very clear signal of what's important. And then they know that they are getting rewarded on those values, and then that feeds down throughout the business. And so I would encourage you to be very thoughtful about that earlier on in your career than I was. I mean, it's something that I wish I had done 5 years ago, and certainly could have, but I just never really prioritized it. It's not that I didn't have core values that we were exhibiting and living by and doing all these things with. I just was not doing a good job at communicating that to the other people on the team. And so by going through that process and really solidifying that, it forced me to kind of search inwardly and say like, hey, what is really important? And like, what is the kind of company I want to build? And then articulating that in a way that other people can understand that, and then selecting like for people that are going to be living and doing that consistently. And that's really the process that we went through, and that I would encourage you to. But if it's something that, like, if you're the entrepreneur and you're starting the organization, then it's only ever going to work if it's consistent with who you are as a person, and if the values are what are consistent with how you are are living your life and how you want to move going forward. And like, it can't be like one of these exercises that you aspirationally pretend you're going to live by these values, because people are smart and they see that. And they're like, if you say you're going to do one thing and you tell all your employees that that's important, but then you're doing the opposite and you're living the opposite, then that's never going to work. And that's why I preach self-awareness so much, like when kind of setting your like life vision, or kind of your long-term vision for your business. You got to make sure that it's really consistent with who you are, and like what you're willing to do, and the type of person you're willing to become, because that will be your limiting factor. And so as long as your values are consistent with that and you're able to live that, then you're going to have a much easier time, I think, setting that example for other people to follow. But then you have to also be willing to not allow people, even if they are high performers in certain commercial areas, if they don't exhibit your values or your culture, you have to be willing to cut ties with them and move on, because you can't let people stay just because they may be good at certain business things but are not consistent with your values and what you want out of your organization. And that's another thing I think that's hard for a lot of people. It's hard for me, to live that, because sometimes you get stuck. You're like, oh, this person's really helpful for me, but they, really don't exhibit the right kind of values that we want. Like, you have to be in those situations willing to move on, and because your other employees know that, because they know, like, you're not being truthful if you say, hey, this is what we reward on these values, but then this other person is maybe doing something that's making you money, but they're not living up to those values, and the companies that you're sending a signal to everybody else that, hey, the values don't really matter. It's only this other metric that we're measuring on. And so you have to be very aware of that. And that's easy to say and hard to do, but that's the only way that you truly set a culture. So that would be my long-winded answer for you. Chen Tian. Hi, David. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Is FilterBuy your first attempt of entrepreneurship? What have you learned from your previous experience attempts? I've talked about this a lot in the past, but FilterBuy, I would say, was an evolution of really decades of attempts and experiences. I mean, like, I started, as a quote unquote entrepreneur, probably, when I was 11, and did stuff like designing websites before, that was really a big thing, or selling stuff on eBay. Like, I used to, like, when in my teenage years, I would, put together computers and then sell them as full computers on eBay. So I'd buy the components and then sell computers that I put together. Was one of those early businesses. I had a car wash business where I learned that, like, marketing in flyer marketing in in high net worth neighborhoods did not actually work. It did not get people to call you to get their car washed. But I thought it was a great business idea at the time. I tried so many things that then ultimately evolved, in the skill sets that I built in those things ultimately are what evolved into FilterBuy. We put out some content and some shorts about it, but the origin of FilterBuy actually came from where I was an affiliate for StubHub selling tickets, and I started kind of learning how to drive traffic, and then I started drop shipping stuff on Amazon, which then ultimately led me to starting FilterBuy. And so I think about entrepreneurship as an evolution, and not necessarily an end goal, but like the more that you evolve, the more that you learn, the more opportunities you're going to see, and you're going to be able to expand your horizon as time goes. And so I wouldn't really get lost in the idea so much as you kind of have to start and let those skills and that knowledge compound, and you may get into something that you think is a good idea, and then it may not work out as you expect, but then you see, hey, well, being the affiliate on StubHub maybe isn't that great, but if I could own the customer, maybe that would be better. And then you move on to drop shipping, and you say, oh, well, maybe this drop shipping thing, the margins aren't so great. It would be great if I could actually manufacture the product. And then you end up like me in my filter business. But you'll go through that. You can go through that process in any industry. I mean, actually, tomorrow we're putting out one of my favorite episodes that we put out. where I actually talked with a young entrepreneur named John who has a third-party fulfillment business, and he started with $1,000 and turned it into a very decent-sized company at 26 years old now. And he had the exact same experience where he didn't start out in the third-party logistics business. He started out drop shipping stuff on Shopify, or actually, I don't think he was drop shipping. He was actually manufacturing shampoo or something like that in his house. And then his friends started asking him how he was fulfilling his orders, and he was just fulfilling the orders himself. And and they're like, well, can you fulfill for us? And that's ultimately what led him to starting his third-party logistics business, because he realized that all these people that had brands didn't want to fool with the fulfillment, and he saw an opportunity in that. And so he took $1,000 and built it into a decent-sized business. We're actually highlighting that whole thing tomorrow, and I think I highly recommend you watching it. I think it comes out at 9 a.m. On Saturday, and it kind of walks through another person that's not me that went through this exact same process. But I'm just telling you, if you go around to any entrepreneur, especially this starts early on, that's going to be their experience. Is they see an idea that they think is interesting, they go down that rabbit hole, they realize, hey, maybe it's not as good as I thought, but I see this other little niche opportunity that I can really do something with, and then that leads you down another rabbit hole that then ultimately can lead to your success. And that's how I think about my entrepreneurship journey. And it's still not ending for me. Like it's a never ending process. And that's the other thing people don't talk about. It's like I started out, thinking I was going to sell air filters that I purchased for somebody else, and then just did some customization work. Like that was how I started. And then I thought, okay, well, it'd be better if I actually manufactured. And then, here I am now saying, well, I actually don't want to be in the air filter business. I want to be in the indoor air quality business. I'm on a mission to build the world's leading indoor air quality company. But that's not how I started. I kind of worked up step by step by step, and learned and it tasted things and experimented and grew and iterated. And I will continue to do that for the rest of my life because I love it. But that's what entrepreneurship is about. It's not about that first attempt. It's about the evolution of all those attempts that you do. So that's really how you need to be thinking about entrepreneurship if you want to be an entrepreneur. Like if you're not prepared to do that stuff and that doesn't sound exciting to you, completely fine. Just do yourself a favor and know that now, and don't go become an entrepreneur, because that's what like any successful entrepreneur I've ever met or I've ever seen has gone through a process like that. And by the way, the other way you can do that is go out and work for another company or work for another entrepreneur if you can, and get that experience and taste it while somebody else is paying you to learn those skills. Like that is a highly, that's something that I think people oftentimes overlook, because they want to be the entrepreneur early, where they would really be better off going and learning those skills. One thing people don't talk about it a lot is the most successful entrepreneurs are generally in their 40s and their 50s. And it's because they've had enough experience and they've gotten to learn how the world actually works, or how these businesses actually work, oftentimes by working for somebody else before they get that real idea, and they have the knowledge to go out and build something. And so if you're like in your early 20s or your 30s, you're still just getting started, you're so young, like you don't have to go out and be an entrepreneur just because it seems sexier or it's a better thing to say to somebody, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. You should go out and get that experience. And it's actually better if you can get that experience while getting paid from somebody else. That's actually what I would recommend doing, is going and learning that way. And that's a completely viable and okay plan, but it takes patience and self-awareness. And that is what I think is lacking so much in most people is that patience, that willingness to say, hey, I'm okay to give up my 20s and 30s learning and experimenting before I go out and take my big shot, when I have the knowledge and the skills to do it. That takes patience, but a lot of the biggest businesses are actually built that way, believe it or not, if you go and study it. And it's not what you see online, but this is the reality. And I think people don't talk about that enough. So those are all my high level thoughts about that. Hopefully you find that helpful. Simon Bennett, what drew you to physical products? Have you ever looked into software businesses with higher margins? Well, I mean, of course, I've looked into software businesses with higher margins. And now, like, most of these software businesses are scared because AI is coming for them and probably coming for those margins. So, maybe the tables have turned a little bit. I think if you look out over the next 5 years, you may be asking that question without so much arrogance in a way. But I'm a studier of businesses. I've looked at lots of businesses. I'll tell you, I was really attracted to physical products because, it's for me, it's like such a tangible way to prove to myself that like I'm offering value to the world and like a service that the world actually needs. And like I started this coming from a trading background where I was an options trader. I was an options trader for Goldman Sachs, and I was basically a bookie for hedge funds, and I did not find any fulfillment in that. Like, yes, I was making money, and I could imagine making a lot more money, and I was making a lot of money for other people. And but I was looking at it and saying, like, what value am I actually offering? Like, what is my purpose in society? Like, why do I exist? And a physical product is the exact opposite of that, right? Like, if I'm selling you an air filter, then I'm providing a service or a product that you actually need. Like, you need that to protect your HVAC system. You need that to filter out the pollutants and particles in your air ducts. Like, it's something that you need, or a school system needs, or a hospital needs. It's a genuine need that we as a society have. And I knew if I could figure out a way to deliver on that consistently, that I would be financially rewarded for it. And I would also feel good about that, because I knew that, it may be small, but it's actually a purpose that I serve, that I uniquely am suited to do, and value that I'm offering. And I can, wrap my head around that and understand that. Whereas, like, so many of the software businesses that like I've played around with it and whatnot over the years are really kind of taking advantage. It's kind of very similar to finance, where you're taking advantage of a mismatch of data or information or whatnot, that you can make a lot of money in for a while, and then it ultimately gets competed out. Not all software is that way. There's a lot of great software. I mean, I'm not knocking software in general, but I think a lot of like the small applications of software, that's really the case. And which you may or may not know, is like the only reason our business exists is because of software that we have built, that I have really built over the years, that allows our business to function in the way that it does. And so, like, I would argue that we are kind of a software company in a weird, wonky way, because we're using software to make our physical products a lot more efficiently, and our distribution way more efficiently. And that comes down from software that we built. We just didn't rely on a third party to do it. But when I think about margin expansion and whatnot, then that ultimately, we're getting into the service business in a big way, right? So like where we're offering tangible services that are not necessarily product, but services in our HVAC services business. And things like that are where we can take our customer base and hopefully, have other products that, that have higher margins, so in your world, so to speak. But oftentimes those margins don't come free. Those gross margins come with a lot of other costs that are associated with it, from advertising and whatnot. And they're not in practice at scale as high margin as they say. So like, I think you have to really think a little bit different between like gross margin and net margin. And a lot of like software companies that have to spend so much on promotion and advertising and whatnot may have high gross margin business, but their actual net margin, if you take out venture capital and this kind of stuff, is not nearly as good. Like at scale, like when you get to like a Salesforce level or these big, then like, yes, they're able to preserve those higher margins. Although I think that there are a lot of competitive pressures with AI and stuff coming for those things. But at a small scale, oftentimes those high gross margins are offset by lots of insidious costs like marketing and go to market and whatnot, and sales teams, commercial sales teams, all this kind of stuff, that the actual net margins are not all that good, or not as good as the gross margins would make you think. So I would make sure you're not just conflating gross margins with net margins at some type of scale. But you can definitely do well in software businesses, and it's certainly something I've thought a lot about and studied a lot about. But maybe it's my upbringing. I don't know what it is, but like I'm definitely a fan of physical products and physical tangible service. Like I like running a business that I can articulate why we exist, and I think that I think that's kind of that's kind of the factor that I would encourage you is like if you're in a software business, like why do I exist? What is this likely to look like in 10 years from now? Like why should I exist 10 years from now? What value am I offering? And there's plenty of software where you can articulate that. And I think that those are great things that you should go out and build and do. But I think that so many people get into like micro SaaS businesses, for instance, because they see like a commercial opportunity that, in 10 years, if they're honest with themselves, probably won't exist. And so that's really not a business. You're just kind of arbitraging an opportunity through a quote unquote software business. And that is like the vast majority of the software businesses that I see in practice out there. But that doesn't mean that there are not plenty of good software businesses that are solving like actual problems. Like if I was getting into software, what I would do is go out and find like real world problems, like an air filter business, and solve them. Like there's a company, and this is not investment advice. I know nothing about it, but there's a company in the trucking business that now the name escapes me that I'm talking about it, but it's like a very legacy old piece of software that is that is ingrained in a lot of trucks, and a lot of businesses are run off of it, and it has not been modernized in a long time and without a lot of investment in it. And it's the kind of industry where I could get excited about going and building software to make those businesses more efficient and kind of modernizing it and going through that road. I mean, and things like that are where I get excited about software. It's not the path that I've taken, but I think like if I was going to go into software, I would want to make sure that I was solving like a real world tangible problem that is not likely to go away. And that's how I would think about software. And hopefully that's how you're thinking about it. But I just see so many people or so many ideas I've gotten pitched over the years are really just kind of arbitrages in a certain market that are not likely to stand the test of time. And I think that that's just setting people up for failure, even if you can make those higher margins in the short term. So that would be my long-winded answer to your question. Kareem um, Shaikh, before entering the HVAC business, did you look at other adjacent businesses, e.g., vent cleaning, and what made you ultimately land on HVAC? We do vent cleaning, like air duct cleaning, within our HVAC business, and it's definitely something that we're big on and want to scale more. I just, from what I understand about it, how I've looked at it, like those are not great standalone businesses. Although it's something that we would definitely look at. Like one of the things you're going to hear me talking a lot more about over the coming weeks and months is, basically like we're interested in acquiring businesses like that, that makes sense, or partnering with them, in a way that, where we can bring in customers and, take control of the business and bring in customers and really expand that business is something that we're going to be talking a lot about. I'm going to be talking a lot more about over the coming weeks. And I've actually looked at a couple of air duct cleaning businesses, but they just were not really, they weren't really viable businesses at any type of scale, unfortunately. But if you have one that is and interested in talking, send me a message. It's definitely something that we will look at. Like we're interested in like anything that is indoor air quality. It's like the air duct cleaning, like mold remediation, those types of things would definitely fit in that bucket. And it's something that we're actively pursuing and studying and interested in. But the HVAC business is the only business that we're actually in at some type of scale, and it's something that we intend to scale nationwide over time. And I'm very confident that it's something that we're going to be in. That's why you see me talking about it. But I definitely have looked at a lot of these other businesses, and I'm interested in a lot of these other businesses. And if you have opportunities, happy for you to send them my way. And we're actually going to put out a website soon where we're going to collate all these things, so people that have these types of opportunities can send them to us, and we'll take a look at it. And it's definitely something I'm interested in. Anything that touches indoor air quality or air or filtration in general, like that is the wheelhouse for us for Filter by Ventures, and it's something that we're going to be talking a lot more about as we go into the new year. So I've got a 12 o'clock meeting. I'm gonna have to go in a second, but Michael, if you want to do one more, I can probably do one more quickly, but I can't go over today because I'm booked, unfortunately. Um, Camilla, David, you mentioned it's not worth investing into the sales team until you can invest into the structure and that you failed multiple times in this area. Can you elaborate more on that? I'm really struggling to find good salespeople, especially with limited resources. How do you start building a sales team? Thank you for all these super valuable videos. They're very insightful. I saw you commented on a couple of posts, and so I appreciate that. And you know, I will do my best to give you a short answer on this, and we can maybe revisit it. But I've struggled setting a sales team, and like the problem, like with a question like this, is I don't really know what industry you're in or like what you're really looking to accomplish, and like everything is different. There is no one size fits all answer. Unfortunately, I know it would be great if I could show you like a YouTube video for you to click on that's going to solve your exact problems, and we all get sucked into those. And I hate to tell you, it doesn't exist. It just doesn't. Every industry is different, but there are principles that you can follow. And I think that the video that I put up with Lee Salz really talks about some of those principles. And I think we actually did a pretty good job of digging into this. But like you tell me you have limited resources and you're struggling to find it. That the honest answer, and I know you probably don't want to hear this, but the honest answer is you need to go figure it out yourself. You need to be your chief salesperson. You need to go figure out what it takes to prospect and be successful and to build that system so that then you can go out and hire and train another salesperson to do it. And that's just the reality. And I know it's not the answer you probably want to hear, but I think like from based on your comment and the little bit of information I can take from you, like my honest advice is like you need to dig in and prioritize it and figure out how you're going to be your own best salesperson, figure out what's working, the types of strategies that are working, and then you can go out and hire and train somebody to do it. But until you figured it out yourself, I just think that you're going to be spinning your wheels and and not being successful at it. Like I, for the first decade or so, was basically the only true salesperson that we at FilterBuy have in that division. And so like I learned like what type of industries we want to be targeting, what type of product mix we need, what are our value propositions, what is our differentiator. Differentiating is so important. I know Lee Salz it talks a lot about that. Like I really dug into all of that myself, and based off of your question, I think you haven't done that yet. And I highly like that is really your only path forward. And then you can start to earn the right to go out and hire other people and train them and expand from there. So it may not be the advice you want to hear. I know it's not the easy easy quick fix, but like honestly, it doesn't exist. Like you can keep searching for that, and you're not going to find it. Like any sales training video is not going to answer it for you for your specific answer. You got to go out and figure it out yourself, and obviously learn what you can from other people that are talking about it, preferably like in the type of industry that you're in. But I think you got to go out and crack the code yourself before you can expect somebody else to crack it for you. And I hope you can understand that and take action against that, because the sooner you do that, the better off you're going to be. I got to run to a meeting. Thank you so much. Hope to see you next week. Don't forget to hit the like button, because that's what will give me back next week. And have a great weekend, and we'll be ready to attack it next week in the second full week of 2025. So see you then. Thank you so much.